Okay.
Jan,
I should go, but also Paul should go. Paul Gerken's here. Paul?
Oh, Paul's here. Oh, good. He's late. Okay, good. He can go to the.
Paul, you can go. Paul Gerken, so kill your Zoom audio and go to Jack Trip Sound Check Lisa.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Bye, Paul. See you.
Bye.
Oh my, Ming's in Hawaii. Okay. And there's George Martin. Oh, Betty Smith should go to the chat room in a Zoom.
Okay.
Roy, yeah, I've been waiting for you. Oh, Paul's got his hand up. What does he want? Roy, you should go too. Go to Jack Trip Sound Check Lisa, but turn off all your Zoom audio. Oh, what happened?
Well, Denise is mute. Oh, I guess David muted her.
Oh, good. Now, Lisa Wunenberg had her hand up.
They're doing something in Jack Trip, I think, because a bunch of them have had their hands up.
Yeah, I think Julia's leading them and asking them.
Oh, that's right. She's doing the sound check for the group.
And
okay.
They're.
Oh, here's Monir can go to the group chat too.
Okay.
Thanks.
And
so can Ruth Collier. George Martin. George, are you hooking up to Jack Trip? I can't tell.
Well, Janelle and George have had a blank tile for quite some time.
Yeah, I just saw another tile show up for George alone.
Oh, you got a new tile for George. Okay.
I don't know what that means. I guess I'm not going to see Ming. I was wondering why Ming wasn't going to show.
Oh, yeah, George. Yeah, so George made a separate connection. So the JT, Janelle, and George is really just Janelle, probably.
Okay, so George, if you can hear me, you should kill your Zoom sound and go to Jack Trip BCCO sound check. Lisa. I don't know. Monir can go into the other chat room on Zoom, and so can Ruth Collier.
I sent them there.
Oh, good. Okay.
I believe.
Oh, good. And Betty Smith. Okay. I don't know why they're still showing up on this call.
Oh, not Ruth.
Chat room. I'm sorry. Yeah. I think that's everybody.
Yeah, Monir is. Okay, I see Monir just popped into the chat room.
Oh, good.
I don't see Betty Smith yet, though.
I think I just sent her.
And Ruth Collier, they always come back if they don't hear anybody. They think there's something wrong. Oh, there's Linda Birdie. She can go into the chat room. Yay.
Okay.
What George Martin did. I think Joel just comes.
It's 6:42. I'm gonna switch over to Jack Trip so I can start the pipe when necessary. So
okay. Bye, David. Thanks.
See you folks later.
Linda Birdie just came in, Jan.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So move her to the Zoom chat.
Okay.
Thanks. Oh, there's Nancy Benson. Wait.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not trying to do Jack Trip today.
Okay.
On the time. So just put me in the regular, I was just joining the regular rehearsal, please.
Oh, okay. So are you sure? Okay. So Nancy should get moved to the other chat room, I guess.
I did.
Thank you. And I hope Roy got sound check. Okay. Oh, Annette Bistrup, she can get moved to the other chat room. And what happened to Linda Morris? Linda?
I moved her.
Oh, you did? Okay. Okay. So she didn't want to do Jack Trip. Okay. Well, I'm going to sound check myself, I guess. So I'm disconnecting Zoom.
We're still waiting for Ming to make a connection. Say something in JT.
Okay, Christian, you should be hearing us in Zoom. How's the volume? Excellent. Okay. Okay, everyone, all the JTs being piped to Zoom. While we're still getting ready, just so folks are aware, that Ming is joining us from Hawaii this evening.
Oh. Nice.
So they're, of course, Hawaii's way too far away for Jack Trip to work. So we've devised a scheme that we think will allow everything to work, although there probably will be a little more delay than we're used to.
Who's in Hawaii?
If it fails miserably, we do have a couple of backup plans that we can fall back to. So we're going to try the fancy pants plan that we think will work for everybody.
Who's in Hawaii?
If we're way too optimistic, we'll fall back to a simpler plan. That we'll lose a couple of features, but it should work.
We have faith.
Oh, is this working?
You'll note when Ming connects, and this
Is that you, Ming?
When Ming
Yeah.
connects,
So is that your Ming sound panel? Where is it? There you are.
Yep.
Okay.
Ming Luke
Hold on. I got to move you into a breakout room with me.
or the Zoom.
Give it 1 second.
He's going to have one tile that's his video, and he's going to have a different.
And my video
tile
is also
that's
here
his
too.
audio.
Yeah. Hold on.
That's the key of how we're going to pull this off. Is we're going to separate his audio from his video. So. And I see Ming Luke's sound has
Now
popped
you're
up,
just
so
showing
I
off.
assume that's his audio. I haven't seen his video yet.
His video.
I see Ming Luke video.
Oh, I think I'm hearing two different
It's on row 4 for
soundtracks.
me.
Yeah, it just must be
I
on a
see
different,
Ming Luke's sound.
different screen. for
I
me.
think I hear two
We
different
see both
sources
of
of
them now.
sound
Now
at
we're
once.
set up,
I
once
agree. I'm
everything
hearing
is
multiple
dialed in,
conversations.
Yeah.
the Ming Luke sound for us will disappear, and we'll just be able to see the same Ming Luke video, and the audio will be coming to us through the circuitous path we've set up.
David, do you see that chat message from Nancy Benson?
No, I have not.
She
done
says you do not seem to hear us on Zoom, so I assume they're trying to talk to you.
that. Chat. No, I should not be able to hear the Zoom people. I can talk to the Zoom people, but I cannot hear the Zoom people. And that's just because I'm the person doing some of the piping and
Hello,
piping this
testing.
audio around, so I can't hear both sides.
Was
Christian,
that
I
Ming
can't
that we
hear
heard?
you anymore.
Yes.
Yes. There's Ming.
Oh,
Ming, we
okay.
can
Hi,
hear you.
Ming.
I lost your sound.
Somebody should say something so Ming can do a sound check. Good point, Jared. So I'll say something every once in a while.
Hello.
Hello, Ming.
Hello. Can you hear us, Ming?
Can you hear us, Ming?
Thank you.
Got it.
We
Yeah, let me try to. David, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me in the
yes,
big room?
we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Can
can
you
hear
make
you.
a sound? Okay, great.
Can you hear us, Ming?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start, everybody. Welcome to this Monday. It is now, what time is it here? 3:45. As you might have heard, I am in Hawaii. My my father grew up in Hawaii, and my grandmother passed away during COVID time, and we didn't have a chance to actually go visit with the rest of the family that's here because of COVID. And so this is my first time to be able to travel to Hawaii to actually see some of family, and we're actually having a memorial in January with the rest of the family. But I took the time to go to Hawaii, see family a little bit, and get sunburnt on the beach as well. So in any case, I'd like to welcome you to this Monday evening rehearsal. This is the last of our series of Brahms. And as you know, we've been looking at 3 different works of Brahms, one with full orchestra, one that's a cappella, and then one that is actually 4-hand piano, traditionally, but that is a piano accompaniment, Liebeslieder Waltzes, the Waldesnacht, which is one of 7 a cappella pieces, and then the Gesang der Parzen, which is with full orchestra, Song of Fates. So in any case, what I want to talk a little bit about is that I throw around these terms, romantic and classical, and it's funny because we always talk. I've mentioned several times that Brahms is a classical romantic composer, whereas Wagner was a romantic composer, and then we have people like Beethoven, which we say is a classical composer but romantic at the same time. And I want to make sure that we have a very clear idea of what these terms actually mean. And so, do people hear me in Jack Tripp?
I do.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Yes.
I got a note from Janelle saying that some people might not be able to hear me.
Janelle, she needs to move to the right server. If anybody can help her, please.
Okay, I can't see you, David, because I am looking at, it looks like I've been spotlighted, highlighted for me. But I'm going to keep on talking while we keep on going. There is a difference between the eras of music versus the way we approach craft. And when we talk about approaching craft in a classical style, that means somebody that bases their music or their structures on styles of the past. And then when we look forward, that's sort of a more avant-garde notion, like pushing the boundaries. So when you have Beethoven, who took the style of music that was around his time period, and he started breaking the mold and pushing it forward, that's why we say Beethoven was one of the, quote, romantic era composers. So I'm going to try to talk. Is this a little better if I talk like this?
Yeah.
So
it was fine already.
No, that's better.
So there are 4 sort of major eras of music that we often talk about that you hear very often. You hear about Baroque music. And Baroque music, remember that Baroque is a very, very ornamented style in art, in architecture, and in music that represents the same thing too. That's why we have all these ornaments. When Bach was incredibly renowned for his improvisations and his decorations in the music. Even though the music doesn't seem as complex, if you look at the notes and all the ornaments and all the ornamentation that happens within the melody, that's where we get the name Baroque. So the direct reaction to that was the classical style. And the classical style represents composers like Schubert, Haydn, Mozart, early Beethoven, and Haydn and Mozart and early Beethoven, Telemann. You have these composers that took out all these frilly decorations, and you had a very clean style, melody plus accompaniment, and you have very straightforward harmonies. And Baroque era, sometimes the orchestration is a little bit thick, but in the classical era, you have a much more clean style. And then, like I said, Beethoven is considered to be the first romantic composer because you had these forms that are very traditional and rigid in the classical style. And he took those forms and he expanded them. And it's like the Parthenon, but he added a sunroom, and he added a music room on the side. He added some, completely different architecture to previous architectural, very traditional styles beforehand. And it just kind of broke the mold over and over again. And on top of that, the music started to have an emotional content and also had specific meaning. So when we talked about the heroic symphony, the Eroica symphony, his third symphony, about a person and about, you know, the creation of a man-made career, right? It's like willed from existence. That's the whole purpose of the heroic symphony. And before that, symphonies were just music. You know, it's about the melodies, it's about the structure. It didn't necessarily have this sort of philosophical meaning to it. And so that's what the Romantic era was about. It's about expression. It's about emotions. It's about Verdi Requiem. We talk about, you know, if you talk about the Day of Destruction, you're not just singing about it. You can hear the bass drum pounding away, the orchestra sort of attacking everything. And then, so when I talked about Wagner taking harmony to its end roots, basically harmony from Bach started breaking down because it became too complex in the Romantic era. Wagner is called the, heavy romantics or the late romantic composer. And so when you have that, in the 20th century, everybody started doing their own thing. You have, you know, different styles of music. You'd have nouveau romantic music. You have neoclassical music, which is music that Stravinsky often did. You have 12-tone music. You have all these different styles. And so those are sort of some of the four more basic eras of music. You have the Baroque, really frilly, ornamented. You have the classical, clean, very precise structures, much more simple harmonies. You have the Romantic era, which is about expressionism and individuality, and that started going off so much so that you had so many different styles which existed in the 20th century. And the other way we talk about romantic versus classical is, again, like I said, from a very strict standpoint to say, are you somebody that looks towards the old forms of the past, or are you somebody who wants to reinvent things for the future? And so when you say that Brahms is a classical romantic composer, that means he lived in the era of the Romantic era of music, which is about expressionism, is about individuality, emotion, trying to use your music to say something. And you hear this all the times with Brahms, you know, like he's talking about his personal struggles with emotions and the negativity that he feels, or the continuation of the symphony. It's a grand gesture of composition, right, coming out of Beethoven. But he always looked to the forms of the past, like we talked about last week. He uses folk songs. He uses harmonies that start off simple and then get more complex to say he could do both. He used fugues. You know, fugues are considered to be very passé because they were all the way from the Baroque era. In the classical era, nobody wanted to use fugues. And then so when you have people like Beethoven in his Ninth Symphony use these grand fugues, or Mozart, you know, those are very, very notable because the style of the time was not so like that. And Brahms still had that sort of same style. And then when you have composers like Wagner, who lived in the Romantic era, but are pushing the boundaries at all times, those were two very composers in great contrast. And we talked about the Brahms school versus the Wagnerian school. Wagnerian school, you know, like reinventing the arts, trying to have, you know, the Gestalt, which was, you know, all the various art forms coming together in opera and to create something that was bigger than the whole. While Brahms was looking to the past. He was looking for forms of the classical era. He was looking towards sonata allegro forms and not sort of trying to reinvent forms, but use those forms with a new style, the Romantic era style, to basically say what he wanted to. So I want to just talk about that a little bit because that's a very important thing about Brahms. When you have certain composers that are pushing the edge, like Wagner, versus the ones that used old styles that were very much of the past, but saying something new in the present, you know, that's what we call classical composers. And so Mozart, for instance, and Haydn, there's oftentimes these pairs in various eras. Schumann and Schubert, you know, in the early Romantic era. Brahms and Wagner. You know, you have all these composers, Bach and Handel, that are oftentimes paired and
Lost Ming.
We lost Ming.
I'm going to use Zoom audio right now. Oops. I'm going to use Zoom audio right now to complete this, and at least hopefully the people that are in Zoom might be able to hear. Christian, I don't know if you can hear, but right now they're saying that, oh, well, maybe I'll just use this on here. So I am speaking now through my phone. So great. Okay, I think everybody can hear me now. So hopefully that works. Any case, what I want to say is that those pairs of composers are very interesting to compare and contrast. And so when you talk about music of Mozart versus Haydn, because they were using the same harmony, they were using the same harmonies, they were using the same structures of music, it's often that you actually can't tell the difference between the two of them. And, you know, Mozart tends to be slightly more chromatic. Obviously, if you know their famous pieces, but if you're talking about symphonies, let's say, that are more obscure, it's very hard to tell the difference between the two of them. And so you have to go to really look at some of the more stylistic things that are harder to find within an era that was very strict. Now, when you have people like Schumann or Schubert, you know, they both wrote grand song cycles for piano and voice. They have symphonies, but they represent two slightly different composers at the same time that have slightly different viewpoints, and you can really compare and contrast them. And then, of course, like I said, when you have Wagner and Brahms, they couldn't be more different, but they really occupied very different ways of experimenting with what music was to mean during that era, which is that what are you trying to say with music? With Brahms, with these three pieces, like I said, like we've talked about in most of the rehearsals so far, is simply that every single one of his pieces means something. When you talk about Song of Fates, it's talking about him. He's talking about his lack of ability to feel like the feeling that the gods are against him at every single point, like that he can never find true happiness and find true love. And so many of pieces have that angst, right? They have that sort of repressed emotion built into it. When you have Waldesnacht, you know, again, you have this old style chorale. And yet in the middle of it, in the second verse, all of a sudden the harmonies become really, really difficult and experimental almost for that era. And so you, again, have a look back and look forward to the future at the same time. And the Liebeslieder waltzes, you know, exploring all the various aspects of love, you know, the good parts, the bad parts, and they just have so much. You can just, knowing Brahms's background, you know that he, you know, was feeling the idyllic parts of love that he always searched for, and really feeling that tragic emotions that seemed to find him all the time. So again, thank you so much for being able to manage with the technological changes and everything. I hope that this exploration of Brahms for these 4 weeks is a little bit more, because we do sing a lot of repertoire of Brahms because he's one of the great composers, great B composer, right? And to me, you know, diving into his psyche and to his emotions and how they manifest in his compositions is very fruitful, because he, as an amazing composer, can capture those emotions at a depth that's very engaging, right? It's very convincing. And so understanding him as a person, especially because during the Romantic era, that's what you did. You're trying to create music that expresses how you feel, and Brahms certainly did that. I think is just as important as looking at the music itself. So in any case, I'm going to pass it along to Julia next, I believe, right? And hopefully the sound will be better and easier. But Julia, that's all yours. Actually, yeah, we'll go to Julia this time, and then we'll do Paul after that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ming. Speaking of technical difficulties, my Zoom just cut off, but hopefully you can still hear me on Jack Trip.
Yeah, we can hear you, Julia.
Okay. In which case, okay, yay, Zoom just came back. This is a great day for technological issues. Okay, I'm also hearing an echo. Give me 1 second. Okay, maybe it wasn't me. Okay, great. Okay, sounds like the echo's gone. Hello, everybody. There we go. We're back. So today, our kind of focus, we did a broad overview of Brahms, historically the kind of first session that we had. The second session, we did a focus on Gesang der Parzen. Then we had last week the Liebeslieder Walze. And now we'll focus on Waldesnacht tonight. And I have a nice presentation here. Let me share my screen, and this is the one. Great. So we have Waldesnacht, and I have a beautiful background of some woods here, because if you remember, Waldesnacht means forest night, like an evening walk in the woods kind of feel. So just a nice background photo I found on Pinterest to get us in the mood here. It seems like my Zoom just crashed again. I apologize, and I will try to share my screen when my Zoom reloads, but in the meantime, you'll just have to listen to my voice. So, Sieben Lieder, which is, Waldesnacht is from kind of a grouping or collection of songs called Sieben Lieder, and Sieben stands for 7. Let me try to share my screen again. All right, here we go. Sieben stands for 7 songs, and it was written somewhere around 1873 or 1874. Just for context, if you remember, this was then therefore written a few years after the Liebeslieder Walzer, if you remember, it was around the same time, and then right before he released his second set of waltzes that he wrote, the Neue Liebeslieder. This is a group of secular part songs written for mixed choir for 4 and up to 6 voices. So there are a couple of movements that have more voices than 4. And as we talked about kind of during previous weeks, Brahms was deeply influenced by folk music that he was exposed to and performed often in bars and brothels as a young musician. And his first teacher, Edward Markson, also loved folk songs and folk music, so I think that he passed that on to Brahms as well. So that exposure to and the kind of appreciation for folk music comes into play for a few of the songs in this collection as well, and it also may have likely affected the way he composed the melody of Waldesnacht as well. Then the text we have, for the full set, it comes from 2 main sources, one written by Clemens Brentano and the second written by Paul von Heiser. There are 2 German poets and novelists who were both major figures of German Romanticism. The final song in the collection is a traditional German folk text. So the first 2 are by Brentano, the next 4 are from Heiser's work, and then the last one is that traditional text here. Now, let me just check. All right, so Paul von Heiser, who I have a whole slide on since he wrote the text for our song Waldesnacht. The Brahms selected the text from one of his works for his middle 4 songs. He was born in 1830, lived until 1910, and he was a celebrated German writer and translator. He was famous for writing in many genres or mediums, as he wrote novels, he wrote novellas in verse, beautiful lyric poetry, upwards of like 100 short stories, many plays and dramas as well. And in 1910, he was the first German author to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. One of the Nobel judges said of him, "Germany has not had a greater genius since Goethe." And in the prize presentation speech, he was lauded as the most important lyrical poet of contemporary Germany. So the text from Waldesnacht comes from Der Jungbrunnen, Märchen und Gedichte, which translates to the Fountain of Youth, Fairy Tales and Poems. And this was Heiser's first book, which he published anonymously in 1850, so around the age of 20. And Waldesnacht is found within, and it's such a beloved work that it's received around 32 musical settings, one of which is Brahms, and one of which is Schoenberg as well. And I would actually recommend looking up his setting. It's written for piano and voice, and it has some beautiful lyric writing, and it's not what you would expect because it was written towards the earlier part of Schoenberg's life when he was going through a kind of Brahms phase and wanted to emulate him. So it's really beautiful in lyric and doesn't have aspects of that kind of 12-tone atonal era that he's more known for. So Here's a last kind of fun anecdote from Heiser on the creation of the poem Waldesnacht. So he was on a walk through the woods with his friend Franz Kugler, an art historian, and he writes, "Then it happened that Franz whistled a melody that simply came to him, which I similarly grabbed a text out of thin air. This hereafter so often composed song, Waldesnacht du Wunderkühle, came to be in this manner to a joyously improvised, hunting, horn-like melody whose dreamy sound was never achieved by any later composer." So I love this anecdote because the poet really kind of came across this poem very naturally and easily, and it shows also the difference between kind of the way he imagined it and the way that other people interpret his words. So it's really interesting. So we're going to spend some time kind of looking at the poetry together. So let's take a moment. Hopefully it's not too small, but I'll kind of read it as we read through it. But let's read through the whole text to get a good sense of our imagery here. So, wondrously cool and woodland night, whom I greet 1,000 times. After the uproarious tumult of the world, oh, how sweet is your rustling. Dreamily I nestle my weary limbs in your tender moss, and it seems to me as if once more I were free from all my insane anguish. Distant fluting song, emerge and stir a wide yearning with thoughts of the beloved. Ah, beguile the resented distance. Let the woodland night lull me, still every pain, and a blissful satisfaction permit me to drink in with its fragrances. In narrow, secret circles, you, wild heart, will know well that peace hovers above with hushed wing beats slowly descending. Lovely birds, sing your lovely songs, sing me gently into slumber. Distracting torments dissipate again. Wild heart, now good night. It's a really lovely poem. I found this translation from leader.net, which is a great resource, by the way, if anyone is looking for an excellent translation of any song that was set by any composer. So now we're going to take a look at the German text and the English text kind of side by side here so we can take notice of a few things. So also keep in mind that this is a poetic translation, not a literal translation. So even though we're seeing these texts side by side, know that, for example, Waldesnacht does not line up with wondrously cool, but in fact, woodland night, and then the Wunderkühle is the wondrously cool. So, just keep that in mind as you are kind of taking in the poem side by side. So the first thing you may notice as we look at the poem, if you have experience reading poetry often, is that in German, which you couldn't really hear in the English translation, but in German, it's written in trochaic tetrameter. So as a kind of poetry brush up here, a trochee refers to a poetic foot that contains two syllables, where the first one is accented and the second one is unaccented. So bum, 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 bum. Versus the opposite would be an iamb, and we're very familiar with iambic pentameter, for example, Shakespeare often wrote, which has the opposite, so it's unaccented first, then accented. Ba-bum, bum, 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 versus bum, bum, bum. So it's just the downbeat is different in a sense. And then when I say tetrameter, that refers to the fact that there are 4 of these trochaic feet in a line. So just as an aside, before I kind of read a little bit of this, I think it lends itself nicely to music, the trochaic tetrameter, because it fits nicely into traditional forms of meter, considering we have kind of strong downbeats and a very common time signature is 4/4. So it kind of just melds and fits nicely. So in German we have Waldesnacht die Wunderkühle. So you hear those trochees. Die ich 1000 Male grüß. And then it's very common when you're using like trochees that to actually drop the very last unaccented syllable at the end of every other line. And you'll notice that's exactly what happened in the second line. Die ich 1000 Male grüß. Nach dem lauten Weltgewühle, oh, wie ist dein Rauschen süß. So just a little bit of that kind of meter that you can feel that happens naturally in German. Now, feel free to actually open up your music because we're going to look at a couple of things. So if you have your music on hand, open it up and follow along with some of the text in the context of Brahms's setting as we kind of discuss this, and you can refer to what's on the screen and then also your music at the same time. I feel like I'm giving a lecture in class here. But so notice now on the very first page in measure 2, the first long note that we have is on the word wunderkühle. So I'm underlining this on the PowerPoint just so you can see what, the translation is. So wunderkühle, wondrously cool. Notice that Brahms placed the half note on the syllable kühle, which is the cool, right? The coolness of the woods. And it lines up with the tetrameter beautifully. Wunderkühle. So he put that kind of long emphasis on that poetic foot there. He draws out that expressive word to draw attention to setting the scene of the cool, dark woods immediately. And now, considering that the song is strophic, meaning that the music is always the same on the repeats while the verses are changing. Notice how in the second verse or the second stanza that the word that's emphasized by the rhythm is Vertöne, which I've underlined here, which means kind of to emerge or to resound. So the kind of sense of like the distance fluting song resounds in the space. And again, because of the meter of the poem, the strophic form of the music kind of highlights this more descriptive word out of the rest of the song here, or the rest of the lines here. And then in the third stanza, at the same spot, we have kreisen, which means circle. So that's the noun of that first line there. So we're in the strophic form, coming back regularly to the same notes here, still emphasizing kind of the important words of the line. So just something interesting to keep in mind. Now, I want you to take a look at the bottom of that first page. I hope we're looking at the same version here. But let's say, so it's in measure 7 into measure 8. So if you notice the phrase that starts with, "Oh, wie ist dein Rauschen süß." So notice how it gets repeated 2 more times. So kind of follow that phrase. I'll sing the soprano line here. Oh, wie ist dein Rauschen süß, and then repeats. Oh, wie ist dein Rauschen süß. And all the other voice parts also repeat this. That's the first time that there's actually kind of text that's actually being repeated here. So it's repeated for emphasis here, but on the screen I'm now going to underline in purple here, so you can see what we're singing about as we kind of repeat this. So we're singing, "Oh, how sweet is your rustling." So the rustling of the leaves, the wind is rustling the leaves here. This is the first line that has a sense of emotional reaction, if you will, because all of the lines preceding have been kind of setting and observing and absorbing the scene. And with this line here, "Oh, wie ist dein Rauschen süß," we're now getting the speaker's kind of thoughts and feelings, a bit of action with the rustling of the wind. And notice also the beautiful text painting that's happening. I think we mentioned this at a previous rehearsal, but especially in measures 10 and 11, our altos and tenors are singing the word Rauschen, which is that kind of rustling, that murmur rustling kind of noise, on a melisma. So there's even more emphasis of that word there. So the melisma, again, is when you have many notes to one syllable. So as you can see in the score there's lots going on that one word. So altos and tenors, you are the wind rustling through the leaves here. So keep that in mind when we sing it later. So now this is all well and beautiful, but does it hold up again when we return to the section on the following verses? So verse 2 has a singing, and I'll underline, beguile the resented distance, which again, if you kind of look at the phrasing before it, this is the kind of first moment where we have kind of emotional reaction after opening lines of description and scene setting. So the kind of repetition here, in a sense, is helping to restate the more important words, if you will. And then verse 3 is a little funky. I'll underline in purple what's in the score here, but as you can see on the screen, lines 3 and 4 are connected in the sense that there's kind of still a flow of idea between those two lines. So Brahms decided to set kind of a combination of those words on the repeated section here. But he's elongating this whole idea that kind of piece is floating down with the flapping of its wings. So a very kind of hushed and relaxed sense here. And I think this part is certainly the most evocative part so far of the stanza. So it lines up beautifully with this repeated and emphasized melismatic section. Now, kind of the last section here, we have repeated words. Let's take a look at, this is the last page now. So it's the last page of music, specifically measures 19 to the end. And notice that we have more repetition again. So I'm going to sing the soprano line for context again, but this is the All der Iren. So we have All deren gefallen los, all der Iren gefallen los. And there's immediate kind of difference between those two sections there, even though it's repeated, but it has a very different kind of musical sense to it. So the first iteration is anguished. It's coming after, if you remember, kind of a really big build-up, not only dynamically, if you notice from measure 17 into 19, we have that big crescendo, but also there's a lot of harmonic movement and just anguish and just anxiety happening in this section. So there's a big build-up, this moment, and it's very emotional. But then the second iteration, starting in measure 21, kind of resolves to a sense of rest by the end. So I'll underline in green this time the corresponding spots in our poem and translations, and I'll do all three of them at the same time so you can kind of study that as we talk a little bit. But notice, they're all kind of senses that kind of come back home in a sense. But think about how there are kind of two meanings to each of these lines. You can say them very kind of emotionally and agitated, and you also can say them very relaxed, which is very cool. So the purpose that I wanted to kind of talk through the poem a little bit, because there are so many verses and we haven't really had a chance to study the words yet together. But also, I wanted to show you that Brahms selected the strophic form kind of on purpose here. And it's very beautifully represented the form of the poem. So it's great to kind of look at new pieces like this and think, or not new pieces like this, but when you see a new piece is what I meant. But you want to think, why did the composer write it the way that they did? So, why didn't Brahms write this in a through composed style, where he could have just kind of changed up the music each verse and did specific word painting to the specific changes in the text? But I think that there's actually a lot of evidence that Brahms studied his text and poetry very carefully before he even started composing or setting any words to music. One of his composition students, Gustav Jenner, had remarked that Brahms instructed him to kind of recite poems out loud and pause in all the right places before even sitting down to compose. And there are lots of books that Brahms owned. So Brahms also notated many of the texts that he ended up using, writing slashes and punctuation marks and just general notes to himself. So he did study thoroughly all of these poems, and I think this goes to show us that Brahms recognized in Heiser's poem that the evocative and kind of active sections of the text appeared in the same places within each verse. So by choosing to set repeated music via the strophic form, Brahms is almost kind of, if you will, growing the trees of the woods for us with his music, and then creating that atmosphere while we take that evening walk and listen to Heiser and his friend Kugler kind of improvise the words of the poems and their emotions here. So that is my portion for the night. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of dive into the text here, and we'll spend a little bit of time singing this at rehearsal a little bit later. But for now, I'm going to pass it off to Paul.
Thank you, Julia. I'm going to try and remember to share my screen right off the bat here so I'm not talking about something y'all can't see. Definitely don't want to join audio. Okay, just one sec while I share the screen. There we go. And okay. Can everybody see these rhythmic exercises that I have up here?
Yes.
Excellent.
Too small.
Okay, so, over the last couple of weeks, we've spent some time doing rhythms, but we never really touched much upon ties. So I wanted to do a few that have ties in them. And you can see that starts in number 2, where we go ta, 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 ta. And it gets more and more complex as we go. So let's just try a couple of these, starting with number 2. And a couple of things. Remember what we talked about last week, where try and memorize at least a couple of beats before we even start, and then try and read ahead as we go. It's particularly fun to try this when you have a nice short example like this. So as you're looking at number 2 right now, try and memorize just a couple of beats of that, and then move your eyes forward as you're tawing those first couple of beats. I hope that all makes sense. So we're going to start with number 2. Just on ta is fine. 1, 2, here we go. Ta 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 ta. Not bad. Jack Trippers, can you sing out a little more? I don't really hear you so well. And we do tend to do monotone when we do any kind of speaking. Ta ta ta. And I am guilty of that as well. So maybe we could all just go ta ta ta. That'll make it easier for me to hear you, and it should make it more fun for all of us. Let's go on to number 3, 2, here we go. Ta 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 ta. Not bad. Look at number 4. Just take a second, like 5 seconds. Look it over. We've got some 16ths added to our ties now. Things get more complex in music as in life. Here we go. 2, 3, and 4. Ta 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 ta. And another thing I'd like to remind you, that was quite good actually, is in sight reading, always think forward and never behind. If you make a mistake, keep going. Keep your eyes moving forward. Don't judge what you're doing so much. You can certainly be aware that a mistake was made, but you've got to let it go and just forget and move along. Let's take a look at number 7 now, shall we? Take a few seconds and look at that yourselves. You see in bar 2 that we have 2 quarter notes tied together, so that's going to get 2 full beats. And in bar 3 going into 4, we're tied across the bar line. If we were singing something here, I would probably ask you to crescendo through that tie. But we're just going to speak. Let's do number 7, 2, 3, and 4. Ta 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 ta. Excellent job, excellent job. I'm sure that it was just as well on Zoom. Why do we spend so much time on rhythm when it comes to reading? In my mind, at least with sight singing, rhythm is almost more important than pitch. If you're in rhythm, at least your words are going to be in the right place at the right time. Pitch, well, yeah, it's important. Don't get me wrong. But if the rhythm isn't there, it just really sounds bad. You have a chance of sounding decent if your rhythm's right and your pitches are wrong, if you just kind of sing in some kind of key. But I think that's enough of this one page. I'd like to talk a little bit about a different kind of rhythm that we haven't touched upon. Let me get that page up. Okay. So we haven't talked much about, you can't see that too well, can you?
Can you make it bigger?
Yeah, I'm trying to get this Zoom thing out of the way. There we go.
Oh, that's nice. That's good.
Okay, and we're going to move this Zoom thing back up. Okay, so compound rhythms. These are rhythms that are usually in 6, 9, or 12. Less commonly 15 and more. But when we have 6/8, we count it like so: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have sort of a triplet feel to that. So when it's 6/8 time, we tend to think of it as being 2 strong beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it's in 9, 3 strong beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 12 beats would be 4 strong beats. But as you can see, things can get a little tricky. Looking at number 10 here, this is no simple rhythm here. So take a look at number 10. Hope you can see it. It is 6/8 time. So 8th note gets 1 beat. When you see these 16ths, they will be like so. I'm going to just give you an example at the first bar. Ta, 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 ta. So the 16ths are broken up from the 8th beat. So there'll be 2 of those in every 8th beat. And I won't ask you to switch to common time from that. Let's just do a couple of these 6/8s. Let's start with number 10. And we'll keep it nice and slow, about 1, 2, 3, here we go. Ta, 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 ta. Ta 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 ta. Let's do those last 2 bars again. We got a little tripped up. 4, 5, 6. Ta 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 ta. You know what? I read that wrong. Oh my God. Fire the pianist. Let's try that again for the pianist. 4, 5, 6. Ta 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 ta. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. But like I said, that's in the past. Let's do number 12. 4, 5, 6. Ta 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 ta. All right, nice job. I think that's enough of rhythm for now. You've noticed, certainly over the last few weeks, that sight reading is not just about rhythm, it's about pitch. It's also about your ear. And I'd like to touch on this a little bit. You need to be able to tell the difference between a major and a minor chord. I'm just going to play a couple of chords. Just shout out what you think.
Major.
Yes.
Minor. Major. Minor. Major. Minor.
Yes. Okay. Well, I heard a couple majors there. That one was minor. B flat minor. One of my favorites. Very tragic key. I think Chopin wrote his funeral march in that key, didn't he? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, what I'd like you to do now is I'm going to play a series of chords, and on each chord I want you to sing, if it's major, I want you to sing do, mi, sol, mi, do in the key. For instance, do, mi, sol, mi, do. Those are the syllables for a major chord. If you hear a minor chord, I'd like you to sing these syllables. Do, me, sol, me, do. The me in solfege is a flatted mi. We're not going to go too deeply into solfege. That's all you need to know. So if it's a major chord, do, mi, sol. If it's a minor chord, do, me, sol. Everybody with me on that? Okay, let's start, shall we? Here's a chord. And. Do, mi, sol, mi, do. Very good. Here's another one. And. Aha, brave, brave. Here's another one. Very nice. Here's another one. Okay, let's see if I can fool you a little bit. And. Listen to that one again. And. Very good, very good. What I did there is did not play the root in the bass. It was a D minor chord, but I played the third in the bass, so that makes it a lot harder to identify. So, why is this important? Well, often you're going to see in music that you're sight reading, you're going to see major chords written. Let's look at a couple of those, shall we? I'm going to pull up some music that I put up last week, and we're going to look at number 4 to start. Let me get up there. And let's remember a few things about what we do when we see a totally new piece of music. What is our clef on number 4?
Bass.
It's a bass clef.
Yeah, bass clef.
Yeah. And what's our key?
D flat. D flat.
D flat major. And how many beats are there in every measure? 4. And look at that opening part. You see how there are a couple of skips there? Those are, anybody know what kind of skips those are? Thirds, fifths, what interval? Those are thirds. So we are outlining a major chord here. Here's the D flat major chord. So knowing what that is, take a second and read through it on your own without making noise. And we don't want to give anything away. Just look through it. Look for treble spots, big leaps, rhythmic issues, anything that might be tricky. And now let's give this a read. Whatever neutral syllable you like, but in the interest of sounding nice together, let's just all do new together, shall we? And I'm not going to play along. I'm going to sing along. Everybody ready? Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, brave, brave, brave. That was quite good. Jump ahead to number 6, please. What's our key signature here?
B flat.
B flat major. Yes.
A little bigger.
Here's B flat major. We had so much success. Let's just go for it. Right. Just don't even look at it. Just go. But remember, read ahead. Let's memorize those first 2 beats. Ready, and. Oh, there's a rest there, folks. Thank you. Okay. Nice reading, though, by the way. Let's skip ahead one more to... Yes, number 31. This is in a... Well, it's kind of given away. We see 3 flats, and normally we would think, what? We'd think E flat major, but notice that the song, or this example, starts and ends on C. So this is actually in C minor. And this is why it's useful to be able to sing do, me, sol, me, do, because now we have that sort of sound in our ear. What's also a good thing to do is to just sing the scale. But also notice that the 7th is raised in the 2nd bar. So that's the one little trick in this one. Shall we give this a read?
Which one? Which one?
And
Number 31.
this is number 31, yes. And everybody got do? That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest. Good rhythm. That 3rd bar, though, that's an A flat there. I heard some A naturals. Can we clean that up? Let's try this again. 2.
From the beginning?
From the beginning, please. 2, 3, and 4. Brave, brave. That was the A flat. Now, another thing that we haven't really touched on, I'm going to jump over to some folk songs here. I can't really see all of mine because of the view of Zoom. I wonder if I can move this over. I'm going to try something and, there it is. Okay, we're going to look at number 42. There's an element
making
in...
it bigger?
One sec.
Thank you.
How's that? Better? It's got to be. Okay, so what is the element in here that we have not seen in any of our reading yet? Can anybody tell me?
Ties.
There are ties, and I heard the second one, dynamics. We haven't had any dynamics in any of our sight reading yet, so I wanted to add a little bit. And plus, this is allegro. What's the key?
G major.
G major. Here is G major. We're going to take this at a decent clip, about doo, 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 doo. We will take the repeat, and we're going to take it more softly. So take a couple seconds and look at the dynamics, and look at, there are some interesting rests in the second line. So take a second, familiarize with the piece. This is a Hungarian folk song. And let's give it a shot. Here's G major. We're going to repeat the first section more softly, as they say. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, and crescendo. That's great reading, and quieter. Let's do a bigger crescendo. Keep the tempo. And 1, 2. No, and no, 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 and 1, 2. No, 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 no. We're in a new dynamic. 1 and no, 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 and 1, 2. Big ending. No, 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 no. Well, I've got to say, I'm impressed. That was very nice. I'd like to do one more. Number 49, please. This is a nice little British ditty here. Notice that we don't start with a full bar. We have a pickup here. And what's our key?
F major.
Is our first pitch at Do. It is. And so here's our key. I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and we're going to go. But take a second. I see a couple of long crescendi, decrescendi. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Well, either you were really good sight readers already and this is just easy for you, or maybe I've helped a little bit. That's good sight reading, folks. Congratulations. Now, before I finish, I'd like to just give us all one more shot at singing Dein blaues Auge by Johannes Brahms. So I'm going to stop sharing so Christian can pull that up. And we're going to, if you'd like to sing the German, feel free to try that. I would love to, but I'm going to be busy playing the piano. So remember that I'm just going to mention a couple of things. That starting, we always want to know our starting interval. Yeah, I think that's the happy birthday interval, wasn't it? Yeah. So that major second at the start. But if we go to the second page, we're not sharing the screen just yet. We're going to wait for that.
Christian just put in the chat that because of the current technical setup, it's hard to share until later at Sing Along Tonight.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I don't think I have it on my computer. Okay, so here's what we'll do instead. Can I have a Jack Tripper give me a random number between 1 and 90?
89.
89, okay. Let's find, this will be true sight reading, right? Let's go to number 89. There we go. Everybody see that?
No, nope, I need to share.
Oh, I'm not sharing. Man. As you can see, technology is not my forte. Okay, now can you see number 89?
I can.
There it is. Okay, this is a Latin ditty. It's based in the Mixolydian mode. Hello, this should be interesting. It says E flat major, but we start on F, so okay. Good choice, number 89. Let's give this a shot. So here's the key. But if we start on F and do it, you want to try singing that scale with me just on new? And so we've got that flatted 7 that's going to sound interesting. Okay, let's give it a shot. I'll play along a little bit. And 1, 2, 3, and 4. That was our flat 7, and up a third, crescendo. Thank you very much, everybody. Beautifully sung. And thanks for working with me these last 4 weeks. I've really enjoyed this, and looking forward to doing more in August.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to pass it back to Ming.
Thank you, Paul. I really enjoyed seeing everybody's comments that these are so much fun. And yes, they are, because sight reading is super fun. And, like we talked about earlier, there are a lot of technical things to learn. There's a lot of details and tricks in the trade. But the best thing to do is just to do it more and more and more and more and more. The more sight reading you do, the better you get at it. The more that you recognize the patterns, the more things you pick up each time you run through it. There's this great music educator, and I'm trying to remember his name, but he was talking about how music is like a language, but not the way we think about it. The way that alphabet letters make words and the words make sentences. With music notes, you have various intervals, and then the various intervals come together to make melodies. But actually, while there's a lot of different variety of melodies and whatnot, there are a lot of patterns that you recognize. Like basses will recognize fa, so, do. If you have something like 4, 5, 1, that's a very standard bass line, or mi, re, do. Sometimes sopranos end the line with that phrase. And so if you recognize those pattern of intervals, then you can actually develop your sight reading skills easier and easier and easier. And so, Julie and I, we used to do a lot of harmonic recognition, harmonic patterns. And you recognize things like cadences, like a 2 to a 5 to a 1 chord, a 2 chord to a 5 chord to a 1 chord. Very, very, very standard. So it's really kind of nice, and it's great to run through these. And yeah, we should definitely do more of this stuff as we go along. So in any case, like we mentioned, this is the last of our Brahms exploration. We take a break for July, and then in August, we come back to Quilt Songs, which is a fantastic work with a collaboration of various composers all together. It's going to be really, really wonderful. A lot of really phenomenal contemporary female composers. But we're going to spend a little time looking at the 3 works that we're doing. And I want to start with Gesang, their parts in first. And Paul, if you don't mind playing with us, I'd like to start from the beginning again and really think about sort of how, before you sing a single word or a single note, this orchestral introduction really sets the tone and what type of music that this is from the beginning. So, any case, let's start to sing. Again, feel free to sing on words if you want, but feel free to sing on do otherwise. But let's start from the beginning, Paul, if you don't mind. Okay? Here we go. I'll just curious to start, but I mean, like, I think the timing is going to be a little funny, but here we try. Go. Okay? 3 and 4. Oh, sorry. I meant to go on, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will do that. I'll middle of 31. And
yeah.
2, 3.
Great. Let's stop there, Paul, if you don't mind. Great. So remember at the very beginning, going back to the first vocal entrance, tenors and basses, sopranos and altos, 2 bars later, that you want to make this sort of that same sort of affected music that is not just lyrical, da, 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 da. It's not lyrical. It is sort of with that same resignation and despondency that you have to tap into Brahms' feeling. Paul, do you mind giving us the first notes for that? Let's hear the basses and tenors a cappella and see what it sounds like to sing with marcato and more accents. Give the notes from the bottom start. Here we go. Again, a cappella, let's try it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Yeah, not bad. So what I hear is that we're not sustaining the notes and we're not accenting them up. Da, do, 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 not do, 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 do. You see how the note gets kind of flabby? When you have an accent and you mark the notes, where you say that it's marcato and it's marked, like little accents, that doesn't mean anything to do with the rest of the note. It just means the attack of the note, the beginning of the note is stronger. Do you decay from that note? Do you sustain that note? Do you make a decrescendo from the note? Do you crescendo? All those things are completely possible, but when we say it's marcato, what it means is that each note has a little bit more of an accent. So for this, I don't want you to think about disappearing from each note. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about seriously giving a tiny more accent, but still with intensity. Still with intensity. So do 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 do, not do 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 do.
Ming, we can no
I'm not
longer
on
hear you.
mute. I can hear. Let me see. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't.
Can you
think
hear
anyone
me?
hears us.
Oh, you know what? I lost Christian in the other room. I don't know if Jack Tripp people can hear me.
Zoom's okay, but Jack Tripp not so much.
Okay. Any case. Do do do.
Like
Oh, they can't hear me.
Christians.
So I'll just keep on talking until sound comes back a little bit.
Just died, so so he's in the process of coming back up. That'll take just a couple of seconds here.
I'm in Jack Tripp, but I'm not sure if Christian is in the room. Christian looks like he's not in that room. I think Christian's line
So that's why we can all
disappeared.
hear each other.
So I'm going to talk to Zoom people in the meantime.
Ming is the only
So
person going through Christian's network tonight. Everybody else is going.
when we
through
have
stuff.
what we call the shape of the note, that's what instrumentalists do all the time. They talk about the length of the note. They talk about the shape of the note. So you can have do do do. We can have a crescendo do do, or you can have decrescendo do 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 do. Right?
Can't type it fast enough.
Zoom can hear us, so.
Oh, Zoom can hear us? Oh, I know. Yes. Yes, we can hear all the Jack Trip people talking about how they can't hear me right now. But all the Zoom people can hear me, but I can't hear them. But
He now knows we don't hear.
like I said, when we talk about the shape of the notes, that's a really important thing to get everything really accented and sustained. Do 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 do. So you can try that right now. Okay. I don't see Christian is still rebooting.
So since Christian's entire network dropped momentarily, he's having to reconnect to Jack Trip, reconnect to Zoom, reset up everything. So it's going to take a minute.
Well, while that's happening, I will tell you some fun stories about Brahms. So one of the things about Brahms
Backup pipe, huh?
is that he, we think that he actually went through puberty like in his 20s, and how it's really difficult because he couldn't grow hair, like facial hair. He actually had his voice didn't drop until his early 20s. But then when he had ability to grow hair, that's when you get the pictures of him with his huge beard and whatnot. But there might be some trauma that he had from working in the brothels when he was a teenager. And all the things, he said he was greatly affected by it. But some of this tragic, some of the tragic history that he had with women might have all stemmed from his time down in the brothels and whatnot. So yeah, we can hear you, Jack Trippers.
I still can't hear it.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience.
If I kill my mic, I can then open my...
We can hear Christian now.
Okay, I'm going to do 2 videos at the same time, but in Jack Trip. Oh, I'm being highlighted on my phone, but I'm also on the computer. Okay, well, I'll mute this then. So when Brahms wrote his first symphony, Julie's actually mentioned this a few times. He spent 20 years writing it, but that's also because he was 40 years old. He didn't want to write his first symphony until he felt like he had the full capacity of composition with the orchestra to make things work out. And it is really interesting because he pays homage to Beethoven at the same time. He has a big chorale at the end of his first symphony, which mimics the Ninth Symphony chorale and chorus.
Okay,
and when there was the first performance of this,
Get Ming back. Hopefully the sound will reappear.
a patron said, it sounds like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And Brahms was so annoyed with the patron, he said, that's the whole point, right? He was considered to be the successor to Beethoven in Germanic music and the symphony, that they dubbed it Beethoven's 10th Symphony. And Brahms is orchestral writing, like we talked about with the classicists. It's funny to be compared to Beethoven because Beethoven broke the bounds. And can you hear me now? It sounds like we are getting back. I'm excited.
Let's see, Ming, if you can hear me, this is Christian.
I can hear you.
Can you reestablish your Ming sound connection, the second connection?
I do. It's up here.
It's up there. Okay.
I have both computer and...
Great. It'll take me a second to move that into the breakout room, and then your sound will also go to Jack Tripp. Okay. Sorry, Ming, on my screen, they both read Ming Video. Can you change one of them to be named Ming Sound, or is Zoom acting up?
Done.
Okay, if you unmute the Ming Sound, it should now go through Jack Tripp and then back into Zoom, like we had it before.
Okay. Is this working now? Yes. Ha-ha!
Yes.
Ha-ha!
Better than ever.
You're brilliant,
Now.
Christian.
Awesome. Yay, Christian.
Yay, Christian.
Yay, Christian.
Now what this means is that we're going to hear you again because we're going to go back to that section. Paul, if you don't mind playing the opening line, again, the opening notes.
Okay.
Again, you can do it on Duo, you can do the text, but the difference between an accent, when you have an accent, that means nothing to do with the rest of the note. So it can be sustained and accented at the same time. Do, 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 do. Let's try that together. Okay? Basses and tenors first. Ready, Paul? Here we go. Paul, can you count us off?
2, 3, and 4.
That's it. Great. Can we stop? Now, sopranos and altos, can we try you?
Okay.
Paul, can you count us off?
Sure. And 2, and 3, and 4.
That's it. So testing.
Let me try a verbal correction, Ming. If any of the jack trippers turned on Zoom mics or sound during the disruption, you need to turn them back off.
Test. That means there's still people that have their computer sound on if they're using jack trip.
Ming, go ahead and keep talking a little bit. I'm
Test.
cycling. I'm cycling through all the channels and trying to find the echo. Oh, did it just go away?
Sounds fine.
Yep, it's gone.
Okay. So I see who it is. I will.
Closer.
Not completely. I got one of them down.
Why don't we move to Julia?
Okay.
With Liebeslieder.
Okay, great. I think. Okay, great. The echo just paused. So yeah, let's do that. So everyone turn to the Liebeslieder Walzer, and we'll start with number 5. So everyone turn to a nice different change of pace here than the Gesang der Parzen. So number 5, and let's just take a moment to kind of sing through the whole thing and see what we remember and how it feels. We didn't have a chance to look at this last week when we were featuring the Liebeslieder, but it was one of the first ones that we took a look at. So, Paul, if you wouldn't mind playing with us, playing our parts for our first run through here. I'll see if I can spotlight my video here to conduct a little bit through, and maybe we can also spotlight you. Maybe, let's see. Okay. All right, great. Okay, we're ready to go.
All right.
Okay, so number 5, Liebeslieder. Our first notes, please. Nice change of pace. So let's see how much we remember. We'll take a nice slow tempo, so we'll go something like 1, 2, 3, 1, and. Sopranos and altos. Let's try it one more time from our pickup. That's okay.
Sorry.
So no, that's fine. So altos. Those are your first couple notes. Sopranos. So sopranos and altos, just hold your first notes. There you go, great. And now let's get into it. I'll give you a full measure for free, and then the measure that you come in. 1, 2, 3, 1, and. lots of great things that we've remembered. So let's see if, as we sing through this, let's see if we can find more of kind of a longer phrase here. I know we were taking a slow tempo, but singing the soprano line, for example, see if we can find a nice kind of 4-bar phrase here. Kind of leading to that moment, and then and really kind of lean into that last downbeat there. That goes for sopranos and altos, leaning in and then pulling back a little bit. Sopranos and altos, can we hear you one more time with a little bit more of that movement and that kind of phrase ideas here. Excellent, thank you. And we'll go a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 1. And sing through. Connect. Nicely done. Brief. And tenor spaces, same idea. And then crescendo into the high note, and then back. That was so tender and lovely. Nicely done, tenors and basses on that last phrasing there. Excellent. Now, even more. So actually, a similar thing to what Ming was talking about on attack versus sustain for the Gesangder parts, and something similar comes into play here because I do hear a little bit of so that we're losing sound in between our attacks here. So think about what happens after the attack. So that your breath is always moving their sound in between the beats. Think about that as we sing through this section one more time. Here we go, sopranos and altos starting us off again. Thank you, Paul. And 1, 2, 3, connect, and connecting through. There you go, keep going. And now breathe, and tenor spaces. And now grow into the high notes. Here we go. And then back off a little. Beautiful. Off. Excellent. Nicely done. Now, without looking at the translation, I know we've talked about the translation a little bit, but without looking at what's on the page, just based on the music, what does this feel like? Type in the chat. What is the general sense that you're getting just from the music? Remember, as we've talked about, these are character pieces, right? So different kind of associations about different facets of love, let's say. Let's see. Oh, I'm also getting a note, someone saying we didn't do warm-ups tonight. You're right, sorry for the high notes. Kind of wistful, I love it. Flirting, yearning, pleading for something. This is all great. These are great descriptive words. Longing, yearning. Yes, excellent. I think that's it exactly. So I'm going to read a different translation, not the one you have in your text, because often when you try to make translations that fit the music, it doesn't really make a lot of poetic sense. So this is a different translation. The opening line, sopranos and altos. The green tendrils of the vine creep low along the ground. How gloomy oh, sorry, so that's just the soprano altos. Then our tenor basses sing, how gloomy too the lovely young girl looks. So plants and girl. Then we repeat. And our soprano altos sing, why green tendrils? Why do you not stretch up to the sky? And our tenors and basses sing, why, lovely girl, why is your heart so heavy? I feel a lot of connection to this piece, not because my heart is heavy, but because I'm a plant person. So this is great, I'm loving it. But all of the vine snaking, creeping kind of sensation here, sopranos and altos, all of your chromatic half-step movements here. You can creep a little bit more with it, right? Be that kind of creeping vine, that slithering vine. Slither a little bit more. And then tenors and basses, you're already getting a nice, beautiful kind of round sound, almost like you're trying to comfort this young girl that you're singing about, right? Let's try right from the top one more time, and we'll take the repeat and practice it, and then we'll keep going. So I won't interrupt us after we get down to the bottom. So we'll do this whole first page twice. So we'll take the repeat and then keep going, thinking about the poem. Express it. All right. Let's actually, Paul, if you'll play the first couple of measures for us too, so we have that intro. So, yeah, and then I guess if you would like to play the first piano this time rather than the parts. Or I guess you were playing I did hear the second piano. I did hear the parts a little bit.
Yeah, I can add, the parts are actually in the first piano part a little bit.
I see.
So
Yes,
I'll just
you're
do
right. Okay.
Little of both. Maybe.
Okay, perfect. That sounds great.
Okay.
Okay, so around the same tempo, so with a couple of measures alone, just Paul, and then we all come in. So here we go. 1, and breathe. Slither, connect. Excellent, and now comfort the lonely girl. Beautiful connection. And sopranos, altos, breathe. Nicely done. Slither, connect. And comforting a little bit. And let's keep going. And 1, and. There you go, altos nicely done. And up. And go. Nice crescendo, decrescendo. And 1, everyone. Excellent. We'll pause there for now. Nicely done singing through altos. Excellent job. You found your way at the top there. It's a tricky section. Remember too how in number 8, which is the Wenn so lind dein Auge ist mir section, has a similar form in the sense that this kind of the start of the second section is a little bit more funky than we're expecting. But let's take a look just so that we kind of are aware of the poem again here. So the second half here, sopranos and altos alone at the top of the second page. How can the vine grow tall without support? That's what you're singing. That's what you're saying. Still a little bit forlorn. And then at the bottom, when we all join voices together, we're singing, how can the girl be joyful when her lover's far away? And we've finally arrived at the point. Not just the kind of comparing this young maiden to this plant, but, right, she's sad. Why is she sad? Why is this vine not growing? She's so sad and forlorn because her lover is far away. We're at the point here. So really bring that out when you get to this last phrase at the bottom of this first page, or the second page here, when you get to the full voices, and notice that giant crescendo that we have too. And the only word, I guess it's not the only word, that would be a lie, but the really kind of big high point on fröhlich, that is the kind of like joyful happiness. So how can the girl be happy, which sounds kind of forlorn on the word happy, when her lover's far away? So keep that in mind. Let's sing the second half one more time, and sopranos and altos still be the vine on that first half, and then find the point to bring it all home at the end. And remember the piano, remember the marking piano when we have the words, even though we're singing on do, the words wenn ihr den liebste weit, right? You see that? It's the very last phrase, back to piano, kind of sentimental or wistful, but almost like whispering it, almost like a secret, right? Because that's the point. Okay, let's do it. Pick up 2. This is page 11. Excellent, thank you. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1. Excellent, still connect. 1, and. Sing through, and 1. Excellent, beautiful, nicely done. 1, and. Here's the point. Sing through, crescendo. And the big word. And then soft. Excellent. Let's repeat. Nicely done. And 1. And. Ready. And. Even sadder if you can. Just the repeat. And go. And 1. And sing through. Even softer. Excellent. That was so wonderful. Nicely done. Okay, so in the interest of time, too, let's skip over 8, actually, because we spent a lot of time on it last week, and let's take a look at number 11. Maybe if there's time, we'll just kind of do a sing through of number 8, just to, celebrate it. But number 11 here. Let's sing through the whole thing to kind of remind us without repeats. So we're just going to sing through the first part, go straight in, just to kind of remind us of it, and then we'll kind of work on it in sections again. So here we go, right from the top, number 11. Paul, if you'll give us our notes. Excellent, thank you. Here we go. And let's take it a little slower as we remind ourselves. 1, 2, and. Excellent on the staccati, nicely done. And keep grading through, no repeats. Ending, which is great. We were not taking repeats, which means that we should have read the second ending, but that's okay. Excellent, nicely done. What I loved as you sang through was that the staccati accents were beautifully sung. Really great general feeling of the piece, of the character piece. Now, again, go ahead and type in the chat, what do you think is the character of this piece without looking at the text? What are we singing about? What is the story that we're singing? Just based on what the music kind of tells you. Someone is very frustrated. Yes, I love it. Jolly, I love that. The idea of it sounding jolly, because it does have a lot of kind of pep to it, right? Scolding, that's great. Do-si-do dancing, I love it. Lots of dancing. And I think also because we're singing it in a slower tempo, it does kind of pick up a little bit of these other kind of dance-like figures too, but it is supposed to be a little bit faster. Resentful, teasing, gossipy, I like that word. Playful or sarcastic, that's great. These are all great. So the text, again, here's another poetic translation that's not supposed to be set to the notes as they come here, but in English we're singing no, which is the first word 9. No, there's just no dealing with people. They managed to put such an evil interpretation on everything. That is the first part there. Then at the middle part, we're saying, if I'm jolly, they say I harbor wayward lusts. If I'm still, the story is I'm out of my mind with love. So you can't really win. And then it repeats. No, there's just no dealing with people. It's a great text. Lots of really great, and you can feel it in the music too, as we were all kind of typing in the chat. Resentful, gossipy, teasing, playful, sarcastic a little bit. It's really, really fun and frustrated. Excellent. So with that in mind, let's actually look at the middle section one more time before we kind of put it all back together again. And keep in mind here the kind of longer phrase that we have. So the tendency is to kind of continue this kind of staccato that we've had on the shorter notes. Like I heard when we sang through it, do 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 do. There's a little bit of kind of separation between the notes. But this is kind of a contrasting section in a sense. More elaborate, like we're elaborating, I guess, on the first section here. But see if you can get a little bit more of that phrase, because this whole first section, starting